Hello, how are you? In this video, I'll be showing you the design of my character, the President of Xilium. Well, plus two other which will make part of the story, but you'll be seeing his face, and also I'll be sharing his actual name for the second time ever. I mean, you'll sort of see his face, I guess. Not his old version, but his younger one. So, the first time I shared his name was actually sort of secretive, but it was there, so I guess, most people probably got it, maybe they didn't, I don't know. So into the actual design part. Honestly, if I have to be, completely transparent here, his design is all based on the world building, okay? We'll have to get into lore, because there are lore lovers here, ooh! You all know that I love doing this. This is the best thing ever. So, if you didn't know, Xilium is a country based in the center of South America. He is the president of that place. The story of Xilium is basically that amidst the wars that South America was going through at some point, it was hard for them to restore their economy. And in a desperate attempt to change the trajectory of the country after, every election turned out poorly, they decide to elect an extremely young man, that being him, who then somehow is able to boom the economy of the country. Now, what is the reason? Why is he, of all people, able to achieve that? That's the real question. So funny. So secretive. Oh my god. So, afterwards, Xilium is known as South America's Scotland, a land of, in quotes, no poor people, which is a lie. I do have a highlight on my Instagram stories, a whole highlights section where I talk a little bit about it. And it's a lie because, for example, we have Selena and the Magna Chi family who, are on the lower end of, they're poor, just to put things straight. They're all poor, so, it's not a land of no poor people. So, but thanks to that, people keep forcing him back into his position as the president. So it's basically a country with a dictatorship, not by his choice per se. He would have stopped long ago, but now he's too far in to stop. And people are what they are, and they just... The Xilium people are really aggressive now that I think about it, because, there are other people that they could elect, and they would have loved to be president. That's why people decide to be president for many, many, many reasons, which we will not get into. But then the people are just no, I don't want you. I want our tall guy back. You give him back. So, he just gets being reelected. And the other people are not a fan of that. But later on, he just gets really sour, and then no one, decides to fight him on it. So yes, he is in fact 7'5", I know, very short man. And in most countries here of South America that I know of, at least, I can't really speak for all of them, but from what I know specifically, Catholicism is the most impactful religion. So in Xilium itself, Catholicism is a big thing. That's why the president of Xilium is presented in a way to give honors to the Virgin. But also the character itself is inspired by the Virgin, story-wise. You can see by the past illustrations I've made of him, together with his future story that I'm working on, and by which ways that he is inspired by her. So for both designs of him, when he was still young and when he gets older, I keep some religious elements in mind. If you see the statues of Mary, you'll find lots of big, long, detailed robes, a veil, of course, and big crowns, some having those spiky things, some having stars, and... Oh my god, I fucking forgot to stab heart again. Look, you're supposed to have this heart specifically with swords, but every single time I decide to draw him, I tell myself, oh, don't forget the heart with that little sword star, and I automatically forget it afterwards. Look, I'll just add it in post, okay? If you don't see it in this video, we will see it on my social media accounts that I added it afterwards, okay? I can't... Every single time I draw him, that's fine, it's fine, I can fix it. That's how he ends up in this position that he is in. But that isn't the story of the Black Garden. I recently made a card site where you can find all my stories and their synopses, including the one for the Black Garden, which doesn't have an actual cover yet. I'll make one soon, okay? Let's not. So I'll read that one for you. If you want to read on my other stories, you can find the link in my link tree down below. It's probably the first link there. So, the synopsis, no, that's the plural, synopsis of the Black Garden. After losing his mother in his re-election, the president of Zelium, in an outrage, curses God for her death and loses all hope and faith he holds, willingly walking into a death trap only to meet a broken angel looking for someone. That is the most cut-down short version that I could come up with for this. And alongside his character in this story, we find two more, an angel and Luftan. This is not the first time that I have drawn them. I actually drew them quite a bit back in the day, but then I stopped in 2023 when I was in the midst of redesigning them. Then I just decided to take a trajectory with their design that I just did not like. It's sort of the same thing that happened with Tigra and Harper? What? Tigra is Harper. With Tigra and Mew, you know, the ones my Furiosies. I decided to redesign them, disliked it, and just abandoned them. That's the same thing that happened with these two. So I just decided to take a step back and go back to sort of their old design again. Even though I think that Luftan did change a bit, but it's not like Luftan had an exact fixed design back when she has short hair. So this nameless angel, which they are just an angel, okay? They have no name, no gender, nothing, but they have wings. They're just supposed to look frail and hurt. Plus they are supposed to look like someone else. Or maybe that someone looks like them. Wink, 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 wink. So they are long, skinny, wear a normal flowing dress. Their design overall is supposed to be like very simple and sort of uninteresting. Because they aren't supposed to be anything but a normal angel. They aren't supposed to be eye-catchy or to like catch the attention or be like this thing that you keep your focus on. They're just supposed to be very boring. And then we have Luftan. Yes, her design and personality are in fact based on the succubus I can't pronounce the word. In my head I was saying it fine. Succubus. Suku. I give up. You can just search it up. Look, it's on the screen there. But she isn't one, okay? She isn't that. If you don't know what the succubus... I can't! Oh my god. Okay, I should stop. She isn't one. The devil. The devil? Oh my god, no. It's starting again. Every single episode. Why can't I be normal for one episode? Oh my god. He isn't one of those demons that attract man to them. I don't know, like steal their souls or something. I don't know what they do, honestly. I honestly forgot. She isn't one of those. Her form is of this attractive, alluring, curvy woman, like very Jessica Rabbit-like, but with short hair, of course, not like Jessica Rabbit. Which later on in the story, her hair does grow out a bit. But that's like way down the line. That's not even part of the Black Garden anymore. Her outfit here is one we see when they meet. She does wear a different one later on. But this is her work outfit. You know, wink, 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 wink. All of them are based on the world that they're around. The president based on the Virgin, that angel based on normalcy in a way to not catch the eye, and Luftan on her job because that's where she spends most of her time in, just like the president spends most of his time at his job, which is being the president of Zelium, which he basically never stops working ever. So if you do decide to look back at older illustrations from like 2023 below of these characters, don't expect to find like concepts that represent them nowadays. Those are like older versions of them where I was still sort of experimenting and I had a different idea for the story. Some might align, but I don't think most do. story-wise at least. But, you know, some drawings do look cute, so you can look at those if you want to and be like, oh, these drawings are very cute, and you know, that sort of stuff. So, further shape language, which you all know, I love using those for a recognizable character. The president early on pretty much follows the shape of Mary herself in that sort of design, where with her veil she has like that long upper part and heavy bottom part, but in a flowy way. He follows that same steps, and with her crown, the spiky top, in his case, the same thing. So like, there is this spiky halo around him, which connects to the crown in the middle. If you want to know how it connects, right, because at this point it's like, oh, he has like a huge halo and a crown. In the back of his crown, like in the back of his head, if you look at him from behind, you will see that the bottom spiky part of the halo connects to the crown part that lays on his head, and that's how those two parts connect. The Nameless Angel is just a long thing with a flowy skirt and wings. There isn't much to say about that. And Left Hand is just curves. Wavy hair, curled horns, curvy body, even like curly tail if we, you know, go by that sense. It's always like sort of swooping around, I guess. The most interesting part of their design specifically is basically that the Nameless Angel has a broken jaw where there is some type of darkness spilling out. But they're pretty much a floating head. And Left Hand wears a type of fabric over her eyes for some reason, yet she still always sees everything. I do also include an older version of the president from, like, you know, the one that I usually draw when you see me draw him. Which, yes, he still wears his crown later on, since he still is president of Zillium for his distaste. But at that point, he is old, okay? You won't see him wearing that all much. Plus, like, the focus isn't on him at that point, so, like, he's a back character. He has no reason to be, you know, this big thing. Plus, he wouldn't even be at work at that point. I mean, not most of the time, at least. But, like, you know, at that point, he's old. Which you might say, like, oh, but Angel, he doesn't look old, though. Well, he covers 80% of his face, and most of his body is also covered. Plus, he has a few limbs left. There isn't much to see how wrinkly and saggy he has become, okay? He's just sort of there. Also, if we think about, like, how is this guy just full-on covered, wearing full clothes when he lives in the center of South America, which is so fucking hot. It's so hot here, oh my god. You want a fun fact? I'll give you a fun fact, even if you didn't want one. Because I just give him for free. He actually wears that corset more so to bring him stability than anything. You know how corsets were actually made in a way that would help women with stability overall, and, you know, just to give them more structure. Other than stays, which were also there to flatten the chest or something, but like that, it follows the same premise. So yeah, his is basically there to help too, because his spine is screaming. He has a cousin who becomes a big fashionista, so then he sews stuff for him and dresses him up all pretty, and, you know, he lets him do that because he doesn't have a problem with that. I actually have so many silly drawings in mind for this guy that I want to get to at some point, because I find them funny. There is one specific one with Jellish that I want to draw. Oh, I need to get to that. I never have free time to get to that, but I will soon, in like May or June. Man, I'm even writing. This is how I designed these characters for this story. Just really keeping the world in mind and what happened in them to the worlds, and, you know, how it impacts their surroundings, how they ended up in this position and this way, and them, and what purpose they're supposed to have for the story in itself. Because I could have made that angel's design look crazy like I did with these, but that wouldn't serve its purpose, since they're not supposed to have a catchy design in itself. They're supposed to look very boring. And yes, I do later on change the color of Left Hand's bodysuit to red, okay? You will see that at some point, maybe. I don't even know. You know, with some things, some longer videos, I don't record every single part, because sometimes I just add some details, but then it turns out that those details make a really big difference, so I should have recorded them, but then I didn't. you know, I do this sort of stuff in this video too, because I am sorry. So they are supposed, the nameless angel, they're supposed to have this very boring design, just very like normal, and you look at them and you're like, you're not. But at the same time you look at them and you're like, but you also are. More of a, like, principal? No. Principal is those people that are school... what? School owners? No. What is it? Not first? Primary. Primary characters? Like, they are focus. Together with the president. But, you know, it's a complicated thing. While then Love Tan catches more attention with her strong colors and, you know, let's be honest. Yeah. The one with the most detailed design is supposed to be the president, but that's because he is presented in this monarchical way. But overall, I try not to overdo the designs of my characters so that I can draw them easily. Because a lot of times, if you like decide to add like a bunch of these crazy details, it will be a bit tough drawing all of those details all the time. So in my case, I try to simplify a lot just so that I can draw my characters more easily and, you know, just make my life easier overall. Look, if you want me to tell you my illustration process, honestly, I mean, it's best for you to watch a video that isn't this one, but I will tell you either way, you know, I'll just try to simplify it for you. But, like, let's be real, a different video would be better for that. So I sketch, I make the line art, which is just a cleaner sketch, honestly. I add a base color, alpha lock that, and add the base colors of the character. I add a multiply layer on top, airbrush some soft shadows to add dimension all around to the character. Then I add a second multiply layer and add sharp shadows to really define certain areas. I add an overlay layer on top to intensify the lighting, color, and add some backlighting too. I add a new normal layer on top of that and render it by overpainting. In this case, I intensify certain shadows, I add different colors, and just add sharper highlights overall. Just more of a cleanup and more definition. And for the final touch, I flatten my images, copy and paste that on top to keep my layer still. So basically, I flatten, copy, undo, paste. Then I adjust the levels of my illustration to intensify more the values of it. I add chromatic aberration for a more animated effect and add noise to give an older feeling to it and to protect my drawing from anyone trying to steal it by covering up the watermark. And I do usually add a second overlay layer and just start adding textures because I'm a texture freak. But in this case, I wanted the designs to be easily readable, so we'll not push them too hard in this case. That is my illustration process, told by me in however long that took me to say all of that. So here we have Soft Elijah Sorrow. Yes, that is his name. I mean, if we really think about it, he would technically have a different name since his name would be in Spanish. But since we're speaking in English, let's keep things in English in this case. His name is very religious in both aspects to what soft means and to where Elijah comes from. And you know, technically with the sorrow too, but let's not get too deep into that. So, as another thing to like add that fragility to the Nameless Angel's design, I do add like their entire body covered with bandages, and you know, just their broken face also adds to that overall. That is where like that fragility and like that hurt feeling comes from. Also, I really like their eyes, the fact that they have like a just spirally eyes. I just think that's cool. They don't really have color in them, they just have white eyes with like spirals and something. It's just interesting. I don't know. So, I hope you enjoyed this little lore endeavor, and I hope to have given you some inspiration for your own characters, whether it be on how to make some new ones, maybe, or just for existing ones. World building is probably the most fun option for character making, at least in my opinion. I find it a lot easier to make characters that way if I already have an established world and I know how everything works, so in that case I know how the entire environment would impact the character. So, you know, that's just my way of making things easier. And I also hope to have enticed you with my lore a bit too, because I love my stories. That's why I'm here and all. So, I love sharing my stories. In the next video on the Black Garden Making series, we'll be exploring something very crucial for the story that I sometimes forget because I focus so much on the actual story part that I end up forgetting this part, but it's very crucial. So we'll be getting into that in the next one. I hope you have a nice day and night, as always, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!